Hey y'all, welcome back. I was recently looking through Southern Living magazine and I was interested in the states in which they considered to be the South and considered to be a part of their customer base, if you will. And this is on their website. I was actually able to go out and pull down the states in which they define as being Southern: Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, North Carolina, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, Virginia, Washington, D.C., and West Virginia. And there's a ton of videos and articles about what is the South. Of course, no one knows for sure, right? It's there's many different things that go into it. But I took a stab at it, and I tried to be as least subjective as possible. So I think this is going to be pretty fun, and certainly let me know what you think below in the comments, and how close or how far away you think I was, and I'll kind of tease this out here. I have many different metrics. I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 different metrics here that I pulled in. Some of them are objective, some of them are more subjective. But I thought it was fun, so let's go ahead and look at first your location. So of course, South is a location. It's literally on the compass, right? So by and large, most people think of being in the South as being south of the Mason-Dixon line, which is at 39.4 degrees north, which is interesting because that line actually only was really marked out in the Maryland, Pennsylvania border out east, but by and large, most people say it just congrued with the Ohio River and flew all the, or traveled all the way to the Mississippi River and everything below that. I sit here in Cincinnati at 39.1 degree north, so by definition, in looking at that line of latitude, I'm actually south of the Mason-Dixon line. So that just goes to show that it can't just be that. Now, all of these places they do list out is south of that. So if they're going by that, they did a good job. Now, I'm awarding points here because I'm going to have a final tally at the end to see what I consider to be the most southern state. And I was actually kind of surprised by my findings. There's 16 states, well, there's 15 states plus DC in here, so there's 16 total line items. And if you are the most of that category, I have you coded as 16, and if you are the least of that category, I have you coded as 1. So for instance, in terms of location, of course, Florida is the most southern, so I have them with 16 points. And Maryland is the most northern state, so they get 1 point. So Florida, it comes in first there. Now, these are a little subjective. For instance, what was the second most latitude southern state? Well, I went with Texas, and then I went with Louisiana, and then Georgia. So I tried to do it that way. All right, let's go on to the next one here and see what else I got on here. Okay. So the next one is going to be climate. Let me pan over here. Okay. So we've got climate. I had to pull in a real number, right? It couldn't just be subjective. So I pulled in average annual temperature greater than or equal to 55 degrees. So some of the states did not have that. For instance, Maryland didn't have it. Washington, D.C., West Virginia didn't have it. They get a 0. And then for the warmer states, there's actually a list of these that you can obviously pull down to see where all these states land. And again, Florida was number 1. It was the warmest. And then number 2 was actually Louisiana. So that's what we did for climate. That is certainly a part of it. Culture. This is where it gets a little bit subjective. You know when you see or hear it, right? If you know, you know. So this is very subjective. So I'm interested to see what y'all think about this. In my opinion, for my money, in terms of culture, Mississippi is the most southern state. followed up by Alabama, and then South Carolina to me, and then I think Georgia was 13. Yeah, so those are the Deep South. That is, in my opinion, when you think of the South, those 4 states that go right across there: Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, South Carolina. 100% on the culture side for being Southern. Some other interesting things. What did I note out here? Yeah, Florida maybe, right? So you got North Florida and the Panhandle. They're certainly Southern, but beyond that, it's a no. Georgia would probably get more credit if it didn't have Atlanta. Atlanta is, I mean, it's one of the most major cities in the United States. They have the busiest airport in the world. Okay, so there's a lot of transient people going on there in Atlanta. I've known a ton of people that have moved to Atlanta for jobs, so I don't know. That's tough. Kentucky, once you get north of Lexington, you're just in the Midwest. You're an extension of Cincinnati and Louisville. So Kentucky doesn't get too many points there. Maryland, I mean, quite frankly, I think it's a joke that people think Maryland is a Southern state. I don't know where they're getting that from. Other than maybe they used to be able to grow tobacco back in the day. I don't know where they're pulling that from. That's crazy to me. Some people even consider Virginia hardly to be a Southern state. So Oklahoma, to me, Oklahoma is the hardest one. To me, it's where the plains meets the Midwest, meets the South. So that's a tough one. Texas is a tough one. To me, and I've spent a ton of time in Texas, people are more concerned in Texas about being Texan than they are being Southern. And in the west of Texas, you got the cowboy culture going on over there. In the south, you have the Mexican culture going on over there. In the north, around DFW, it's just suburban and it's transient. And then in the east, East Texas is the South. There's no doubt about that, but it's just not enough to make up for the whole deal there. Virginia, yeah, I mean, near DC and Maryland, it's a no. DC, like, what would be Southern about DC? I don't even understand that. And then West Virginia, this is easy for me because I live, you know, I have very much experience with the Appalachian Mountains, and people get confused that Southern and Appalachian are the same thing. They are different. They are just flat out different entities. You can be Southern and Appalachian, or you can be Appalachian and Southern, but just because you're one does not make you automatically be the other. So we have the Appalachians right here in Ohio. In fact, in Cincinnati, you can jump on 32 on the east side of town and take that straight into the mountains, and it's called the Appalachian Highway. Pennsylvania has Appalachians, right? So just because West Virginia is a mountainous country, or state, I should say, does not mean that it is Southern. And don't forget that it did break off from the rest of Virginia to secede from the South. So yeah, let's put that in there. So that's a tough one. But moving right along here, I think alligators are important. And this is where it just kind of gets, you know, kind of fun, is you got to have alligators if you're in the South, right? Like, that's just a part of it. This is actually information you can pull up online. Louisiana has the most gators, followed by Florida, followed by Texas, and then Georgia. And but there's, you know, many states here that don't have it. Of course, West Virginia, DC, Virginia, Tennessee, Maryland, Kentucky, right? Those states don't have any gators at all, so they lose points. Palm trees, you guys know me. That's an important thing. For me, you got to have native, naturally occurring. Of course, we know we all can grow palm trees in other states, but they got to be naturally occurring. And there's several states, pretty much the same as the gators, that don't have them. You know, Kentucky doesn't have any, Maryland, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Virginia, DC, and West Virginia. Again, this is not to say you can't do that. We all know Alan has a ton growing unprotected in his yard and, you know, in Murfreesboro. but naturally occurring native, they don't belong there. They're not from there. So that's why they get a no there. So yeah, you can follow the points there. And yeah, next thing is going to be Waffle House, right? Like it's not even possible to be in the South without having a Waffle House. So you can actually pull down who has the most, and Georgia actually has the most. What's funny is Ohio has like the 7th most. So it's all the South and Ohio in terms of Waffle Houses, which I thought was interesting. So Ohio actually has many more Waffle Houses than a lot of these other states. Of course, we have more population too, so that plays into it. SEC, for my Canadian friends here on YouTube, you might not even know what that means. That's Southeastern Conference. I'm a big college football guy, and the SEC is king. And especially in the South, where they don't have a lot of pro teams, it's all about your SEC school, in particular college football, like I said. So I actually, of course, the no's are easy. You know, North Carolina, Maryland, obviously, Virginia, DC, West Virginia. But for the yeses, what I ended up doing is I just looked at, like, who is the most SEC-based school. Alabama's far and away number one, because they have Alabama and they have Auburn, and they don't have any pro teams in that state. Mississippi, same thing. They got Ole Miss, and they got Mississippi State, and no pro teams. So they're just locked in on SEC. Same with Arkansas. There's nothing over in Arkansas. Yeah. And then so you add up all these points, and let's go ahead and let's sort these here. And then let me zoom over here. So let's see. So my tally, and I didn't edit this after I did it. I just wanted to do it. I had Georgia coming in as the #1 Southern state. I have Florida as #2, which is funny because on the culture aspect of it, I put a maybe. But they're #1 in everything. They're #1 in location. They're #2 in Gators. They're #1 in warm climate, right? Like, so they're 1 in so many categories, 1 or 2. Alabama is the 3rd most southern state. Louisiana and Mississippi are tied. South Carolina, Texas, Arkansas, North Carolina. Tennessee scores surprisingly low, but they don't have Gators and they don't have palm trees, and you get 0 points for those. So that's a big loss for Tennessee. Oklahoma, Kentucky, Virginia, and then this huge drop-off to these places that should never be included in Southern Living magazine to begin with. Maryland, not a southern state, not a southern culture. West Virginia, that's the mountains. And then DC, that's just a bunch of political people. So Southern Living magazine, they got to do what they got to do. They run a business, and their business is trying to sell the most copies of the magazine. So why not include more people? I get it. But Maryland, West Virginia, and DC need to be dropped off the list entirely. And like I said, some people even question Virginia. I'm interested to put Missouri on here, and I'm be interested to see where they come in. Certainly they're going to be higher than 7 for Maryland and West Virginia, because they have the Tigers, so they at least score some points in SEC. But yeah, Oklahoma's a really hard one. They're a tweener. I think defining Oklahoma, defining Missouri, and defining Maryland are probably 3 of the hardest states to capture. But anyway, I thought this was a fun little exercise. And yeah, let me know what you think. Georgia, the #1 most southern state, followed by Florida, Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, and South Carolina, rounding out the top 6. So let me know what y'all think. And yeah, see how this goes, and maybe I'll do another one. Take care, everybody. Have a good day. Goodbye.